not feeling the best today, so hopefully I don't get coughing. But I did mine on students attending private schools with challenging behaviors in Jacksonville. And the reason I chose this is because I have a young son that gets services through the private school. And we're finding that in Jacksonville, there are 4 private schools: our Salem Lutheran, West Fair Christian Academy, Our Saviors, and then we have a homeschool association, versus 7 private or public schools, and 1 junior high, 1 charter school, and 1 high school. There's only 20 faculty members that service the private schools and the public schools. So the time that is allotted for the private schools are not being met due to the demand at the public school. And these are the list of the schools. In the state of Illinois, the law requires that the private schools get funding from the public schools when it comes to their IEPs. The organizations that help support these laws for the private schools are your Individual with Disability Education Act, and the Americans with Disabilities Act, and then the Free and Appropriate Public Education. So once a week, a teacher from the public school has to go to the private school and meet with the students that need services in speech, reading. Some kids need help in reading their test. And each school is given an hour, no matter how many students are at that private school. But we found this year with the public school, there's budget cuts in the school district. They're closing 2 of the public schools, so therefore the students are now being moved to another public school, so the demand for the teachers are even more needed there. The new charter school, and with the new charter school, it has taken a lot of funding away from the school district to pay the salaries of the teachers, the IEPs that are there, and they have their own psychiatrist and social worker. The private school students, they're not getting the services. The private schools do not have the funding because they have to pay for their own school, their electricity, their own books. They get absolutely no funding from the state of Illinois to run their schools. So their funding is coming from private donations of parents, the tuition of the students, and if someone happens to leave some money. And the neglect and duties from the public school is weighing on the private schools because their students are now behind due to the fact that at the beginning of the school year they missed a whole month and a half of getting their services because of the charter school. So the students that are needing the IEPs of the private school are not getting them. What parents need to do is they need to know their laws, and they need to communicate with other parents whose children are in the IEPs program. We had school board meetings this year with the public school and with the superintendent and the principal, along with the principals of all the private schools and the homeschool association, on trying to find out why these services are not being sent to the private schools. That's when we discovered the demand of the charter school, the funding, and the cutbacks with the 2 schools closing. So the parents of the private schools ended up writing letters to the Illinois State School Board Association and explaining the situation. They wrote letters to the superintendent of District 117, and then we made follow-up calls. We didn't want the ball to be dropped on making sure that District 117 was being held accountable for not getting services rendered to the students at the public school or the private school. I did a survey with parents at all the private schools and then 1 public school. And in my survey, the parents at the public school was pleased with services. They were pleased that they sent their kids through the initial period of getting the IEP program started, but the parents of the students at the private schools were pleased with their school, but they were not pleased with District 117 because they felt the neglect of them not meeting the demands of the students that were being needed. And as taxpayers, they were a little put out with that. So, in the end, with all the letter writing and trying to figure out what we need to do to make sure that the children of the private schools are not being overlooked, and the help of the letter writing, we finally had a big meeting and all the parents came together and the students are now being met. Some of the private schools ended up hiring their own IEP. They had to write grants to the state of Illinois through their Lutheran Association and their Catholic charities. And some of them received a little extra money to help pay for a part-time IEP, along with the IEP that we're getting from the public school. So in the end, our students were very pleased that their services were getting back to them, because now they have moved back up in their reading and their spelling where they were at the very beginning. And that is the end.
Questions? I have one quick question. So it's my understanding in your survey there were a number of questions where you could aggregate the data quantitatively, which you did, and then you had sort of an open-ended qualitative type of question. Just can you tell us what sort of themes came through in that question as you looked over how parents were answering that question? What sort of themes were most important to parents?
The main theme was the parents just wanted to make sure that their kids were not falling behind. Because once they fall behind, it's so hard when they already have a disability to get caught up. And they were worried that their kids would be held back. And then there you go with the kids making fun of the student for not being in the same grade. And then the parents were very pleased with their school, but not the public school, except for the parents of the public school, because their kids' services were being met. So.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.